Okay, we're back with the second hour of the Pro Wrestling Spotlight, and we'll get right back on the phone with the living legend, Bruno Sammartino. Bruno, you there with us?
I'm here, John.
Okay, sorry to keep you on hold that long.
That's all right.
Got bills to pay. I was just informed off-air during the break, a caller called in and said that in today's New York Times, I don't know if you have it there in Pittsburgh or not, Vince McMahon wrote an article in the New York Times stating that he's been following in his grandfather's and his dad's footsteps and has accelerated from what I'm just taking from what I heard from one of my listeners, into wrestling, making it bigger and better than ever before. And as far as the steroid testing they're going to institute, and I believe the press conference will be taking place Tuesday at the Plaza Hotel, that they are going to go to an outside company to conduct the tests.
Well, like I say, I'll believe it when I see it, because I don't put much faith and trust in anything that McMahon has to say. But if it comes about, then I'll believe that they are sincere. But like I say, I will absolutely not believe it. Right now, as far as I'm concerned, he's just telling the people what he thinks he should say and so forth and so on. If he goes through with that, really does it, then great. Then I'll believe it. But I won't believe it till then.
Now, there's been a lot of talk, and a lot of media has been blasting Hulk Hogan in particular. He was brought up in this trial. Zaharian testified that he used to purchase, Hogan used to purchase steroids from him. CBS television did a deal where they had asked Hogan to apologize to the kids. Now, do you have any personal opinions on if Hogan took steroids, what he should do?
First of all, I never mentioned names. I've always referred to the percentage of the people that I believed were on steroids in the WWF. But of course, we know Hogan. Of course, he's been on steroids, and for many, many years. There's no question about that. What's phony about the man that I could never respect, that's why I never did, because I knew certain things about him. Well, number one, that he gets on TV with that nonsense about the vitamins and the prayers and the exercise. I question whether this guy's ever seen the inside of a church. Number one, as far as the vitamins, we know what vitamins he's been on for many, many years. And it was all a sham to get people to buy the toys, the merchandising, the videos. It's all a money scheme. And I don't believe there was any sincerity. About a year or so ago, I was going to LaGuardia Airport, and a policeman that I've seen there many years, he came over to me. He was in shock, like, he says to me, "Bruno, how are you, blah, blah, blah." And he says to me, "I saw something with my own eyes that I would have never believed in a million years." I said, "What's that?" He said, "About an hour ago, Hulk Hogan came through the airport here, and about 5, 6 kids ran over to him, and he used some really nasty language and telling them to get the hell away from him." I said, "Well, of course." I said, "The cameras weren't around." It's a completely different ballgame. So the tragedy with this organization, I mean, here's a guy, talk about Hogan now, okay? Here's a guy, I think everybody has seen him now. They showed first in 82 and now again, posing with a bunch of porno people in the nude and what have you, and these women and so forth. I mean, does it tell you a little bit about the character of the individual?
Yeah, pretty much. Andre the Giant is almost like the same way.
They're just like this thing for WrestleMania. And some poor people, I don't understand the mentality of some poor people. If they're, it's sad that they believe that when they shove this garbage down their throat, like. Oh, what an all-American, what a wonderful American, because he visited the bases. Yeah, with a film crew to have on television shows to try to capitalize on that tragedy for WrestleMania, for God's sakes. I found that to be so damn appalling that turned my stomach when I saw this Hogan doing all that crap, and of course with Slaughter and McMahon. Here's a scheme for these people to try to really capitalize on it, and they actually, as they promote on television, some people actually thought that, oh, isn't he wonderful that he's doing this, without considering the fact that when you do charity things, when you go to a if you wanted to visit the bases, if you want to visit the parents or whatever of these people who are in the Middle East, you don't do it with cameras following you around and then play it on the wrestling shows and while you're promoting a WrestleMania, for God's sakes. And that's what I mean. It's all fraudulent. It's all for the almighty buck, and there's no sincerity behind any of it. And that's what appalls me about these people.
Well, the business has certainly changed a lot since you had your heyday, and I just remember sitting at ringside of the Garden month after month after month and seeing how the fans genuinely responded to Bruno in the ring. Now, getting back to the steroid issue for just a bit, earlier this week, I believe Janet Clark was her name. She was with the state legislature of Florida. They are going to be introducing a bill that will require steroid testing before any professional wrestling matches take place in the state of Florida. She had apparently met with Mr. Jim Herd of World Championship Wrestling this past Tuesday, and from what we heard, Herd's comments to her said the following: if the state of Florida institutes this policy of testing for steroids before a wrestling match, that WCW was not going to run any more shows in Florida.
Well, that tells me, what can one say about that? It tells me that Jim Herd evidently must know that a lot of his guys would not pass this examination. I take my hat off to that lady, and I would hope that other states would pick up the same policy, because that is one way of making sure that we'll clean up the drugs. Because unfortunately, what a lot of people don't even know, it's not just the steroids that's involved here. There's all kinds of drugs involved with these people, and so that if you adopt a policy like the one you just mentioned in Florida, if other states follow, that is a sure way. At least I would think that would be a sure way of cleaning it all up, and that I think would be absolutely great. Let these guys who want to wrestle be clean. Let them be legit. Let them be look good physically through hard training and not through these chemicals. And let's set the right examples. You know, I've gone to quite a few schools, and it seems like these kids are so knowledgeable. They seem to know about the steroid use and something. And when they ask me about it, they say, yeah, but you're always talking against steroids. And I see these guys on TV, and they mention Hulk Hogan, they mention the Ultimate Warrior, and they mention, these different people, and they say to me, those guys look healthy. So in other words, in their minds, they think that, how bad could it be? Look at these guys. They don't know that a lot of these guys are not healthy at all. A lot of these guys have medical problems, for God's sakes. So it's sending the wrong messages to where a lot of kids who may want to look like that, and I blame the parents for this too, because, I talk to a lot of people, and they say to me, oh, I don't watch that stuff, it's silly, blah, 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 but my children, they love it. Well, if they only knew what they're doing to their children, because by letting the children watch it and look at these guys and buy their merchandising, whatever, maybe one of these days they're going to find out that maybe their children are going to have some problems because they want to look like these guys, and they're going to find, by taking the same chemicals as these guys in order to get there and in a hurry, then they'll find out just what wonderful things they've done for their children, for God's sakes. So it's a very, very disturbing thing. But like I say, I hope other states would pick up on this. What's her name, Clark?
Janet Clark.
I hope that's a wonderful idea. I take my hat off to her, and I hope that other states pay attention to that and pick up on it. And
lastly today, Bruno, the media has never treated professional wrestling fairly. They did jump on the bandwagon back in the mid-'80s when the WrestleMania explosion started, but now the business of professional wrestling has gotten a lot of negative press. What do you think is going to happen to the future of professional wrestling from here on in? Do you think, attendance right now is really at an all-time low almost, but if wrestling comes clean and the steroids, or if wrestling can rid its business of steroids, do you think it'll be in a positive light and people may start coming back to the arenas and maybe respecting the business?
No, first of all, the people are not going to the arenas because of steroids, because most people, I don't think, were even aware of the problem that existed there. People have gone to the, which before I answer that, let's go back to what McMahon says. He wants to follow his grandfather and his father and all this nonsense. First of all, he's doing anything but, because he's turned wrestling into such a joke, such a pathetic joke, that the arenas are empty around the country. They show this illusion on television by these packed houses, which I would believe that most of them are all papered anyway, free tickets to get these people in there to make it look like business is great. But in reality, the crowds are very small around the country, worse than they've ever been as far as I know. It's just really bad. And I think that the main reason is because people look at it as the cartoon and cartoon characters that McMahon has created, and it's no longer wrestling. For wrestling to come back, you have to get rid of the garbage that McMahon's created, and even this Ted Turner, because he's to a certain degree following McMahon's footsteps. When you get rid of these people and these horrible characters that they've created, what you'll see then, I hope, is that some legitimate wrestling-minded people who will come back and start promoting with athletes, with wrestlers, and not with these characters. And I think it'll take a long time, but I think that eventually the fans will start seeing the difference between the athletes and the freaks. And I think that that's when people might start getting interested again and start coming around again, and maybe wrestling will become popular again. You know, the tragedy is that people who really don't follow wrestling, they think that wrestling is bigger now than it's ever been. And that's the biggest myth of all, because when's the last time Madison Square Garden is sold out? Here in my town of Pittsburgh, where we used to run every 3 and 4 weeks, now they run maybe 3 shows a year. Baltimore, they very seldom run. They can't even run these arenas because they can't draw any crowds. But people who just watch TV have this illusion that wrestling is bigger than it's ever been, and of course they listen to the nonsense that the WWF feeds them. But the truth is that wrestling is getting to be an all-time low. It's in pathetic shape. And so it needs a lot of cleaning up, and not only of the drugs, which is number one, in my opinion. That's the first thing that's got to get cleaned up. But you got to clean up this McMahon and people like that, clean them out of the business, get them out of the business, and then maybe you can get a fresh start with people who really, truly love the game of wrestling, respect it enough to bring in some good wrestlers and do some good things to bring it back.
Well, we certainly hope that that can be the case, that maybe somewhere down the line a new promotion possibly could start, and the various existing independents right now that could bring wrestling back. I know right now in WCW, the NWA Board of Directors, that group still exists. They're recognizing Flair as champion, and maybe there'll be other promotions springing up, and the ones that are existing can help bring wrestling back to the way it used to be, because those crowds used to go out there and were intense when they watched wrestling, and it was a better time.
Look,
I went every month.
Not only Madison Square Garden, but many times we used to
Boston
have
Gardens,
the Forum downstairs.
Yes, the closed circuit.
Back them. And when's the last time that since McMahon has taken over that you see that?
Not very often. I haven't seen it once since actually
How could you see
84,
that when they
85.
can't even draw half a house in regular Madison Square Garden?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, that's the condition that wrestling is in. I have to laugh. Some idiot, and I will call him an idiot, wrote an article recently in Sports Illustrated, and he gave McMahon credit, which goes to show you how much investigating some of these reporters do. He said that McMahon took wrestling out of the little smoke-filled little arenas into the major arenas. Can you believe that? We've been in the major arenas forever, for gosh sakes. It's McMahon who is actually taking it out of the major arenas because he's drawing such poor crowds that I got a feeling that down the road, a lot of these major arenas won't even hold wrestling anymore because it won't be worth it to them to put in wrestling when they draw such lousy crowds. And so they'll be going more and more out of the big arenas and into the little arenas because the big arenas, they can bring the people in them.
Yep. Well, we hope things change. That's all we could hope and pray for. And Bruno, we want to thank you for your time today. Your comments, as always, right to the heart and truthful, and it comes right from your heart. And you've loved this business for a long time, and let's hope that someday things can change. We also are looking very much forward to seeing you next month at the Weekend of Champions convention, and it wouldn't be a Weekend of Champions convention without Bruno Sammartino there.
Thank you, John. I'm looking forward to that. I really am. Okay. Last year when you had that, and met a lot of fans from my era used to come to the matches, and it was great seeing them and talking to them and so forth. So I'm looking forward to this one, too.
Okay, great. Bruno, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, John.
Well, there you go, Bob. The living legend at the time, Bruno Sammartino, who's dearly missed today. I mean, he didn't hold anything back, and it was probably one of the most explosive segments during this whole coverage of this trial and this era in wrestling.
Bruno Sammartino was right, and I just want to say, this is a little off topic, but I have to say this. Bruno Sammartino drew more heat walking to the ring. Let me repeat that. Walking to the ring than most wrestlers will ever obtain in a lifetime in the ring. And I think you'd agree with that from all the years you spent at MSG. And he had an absolute right to be as upset as he was.
Yeah, I mean, his legacy without music, walking. As soon as he came through the curtain at Madison Square Garden or Boston Garden or Philadelphia, it was heat. It erupted. The crowds erupted, and it was something that to this day I really can't say that I've experienced in pro wrestling again, because it was that suspension of disbelief that he always had, and people did believe and fully believed in what Bruno was all about.
No fan base was ever more passionate about a professional wrestler than Bruno Sammartino. If you're young and you have access to WWE on Peacock, or if you want to look at YouTube, just type in the words Bruno Sammartino and just watch any match. Watch the match before it starts. The big question, well, does he have a towel today or doesn't he? He never brought anything to the ring other than Arnold Skolin.
And his belt.
And his belt, most of the time, yeah. But no wrestler ever had a fan reaction like Bruno Sammartino. Because I've seen wrestling all over the country. And yes, there were regional stars. I think Vern Gagne was kind of close to that in the Minnesota area. But Bruno was one of a kind in terms of the just absolute adoration the fans had for him. It was unreal.
Absolutely. And we miss the man. I tell you that. I miss him.
Boy.
Miss him dearly.
Yes.